Hello and welcome to the Civil War Project, where I'm retracing Civil War history one person, place, and event at a time. Because the build-up to the Civil War is just as important as the war itself, I've created a weekly recap series that posts every Tuesday. This is your weekly recap for Monday, February 7th through Sunday, February 13th, 1859. For previous weeks, you'll find them on my channel under the weekly recap playlist. So, let's talk history. Arkansas Governor Elias N. Conway signs Act 151 into law. This act requires anyone who has at least one grandparent of African descent to leave the state by January 1, 1860. Anyone who does not leave by that time will be forced into enslavement for a period of 1 year. The proceeds from that forced labor will then finance their future relocation out of the state. At this time, there are around 700 free black and mixed-race people in Arkansas, less than any other southern state. Arkansas legislators had been discussing this action for almost 10 years. When the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in 1857 that Dred Scott and any African American, quote, had no rights that a white man was bound to respect, it reassured Arkansas lawmakers that they had the authority to pass an expulsion law. Though other southern states had considered similar measures, they had come to nothing. This act shows the fear white politicians had of African Americans, who lived outside the constraints of slavery and therefore were not as easily controlled. The New York Times publishes an article titled "Another Virginia Insurrection," which highlights the state's frustration with President Buchanan. In 1856, two-thirds of Virginians had voted for Buchanan, but how he has handled the now failed attempt of a Pacific Railroad, along with the $30 million proposed purchase of Cuba, is leading people to believe he is too extravagant and misguided. The Times notes that it's almost impossible to find any Democrat in the capital of Richmond that still views Buchanan favorably. Even the Virginia newspapers are coming out with forcible arguments against purchasing Cuba, even though one of the reasons Buchanan wants it is because the island has a few 100,000 slaves, and he sees it as a future slave state that would help the South gain power in Congress. Abraham Lincoln gives a lecture titled "Discoveries and Inventions" to the Phi Alpha Society at Illinois College in Jacksonville on February 11th. It's an interesting speech that showcases his natural storytelling ability and also his sense of humor. He cleverly discusses the differences between what he calls the old fogey and young America. Lincoln believes that young America may think they are far superior and more worldly, with the idea that they are the ones making the discoveries, inventions, and improvements. However, he believes that none of those things would be possible without the old fogey and his years of observation, reflection, and experiment. To Lincoln, it's the work of both the old fogey and young America that has led to such progress in the last couple of decades. Lincoln also reminds his audience that the energy of youth is a great thing, but that it also must be kept in check as their ambition could work against them. The following day, Lincoln attends the sentencing of Newton F. Jones. Jones was indicted on 4 counts of mail robbery, with the charges stating he had opened mail and stolen items of value. Newspapers had reported that value to be around $1,100. 8 witnesses had provided testimony, and Jones was only found guilty on the 3rd count. Today he is sentenced to 8 hard years at Alton, Illinois, a $10 fine, and the reimbursement of prosecution costs. Lincoln promises Jones that after he has served half of his sentence, he will do everything in his power to obtain a pardon for him, as long as his conduct during the next 4 years justifies it. Did I mention that this occurs on Lincoln's 50th birthday? Being a lawyer, traveling around for speaking engagements, these 2 back-to-back events are a good example on how Lincoln spends his time nowadays. He is aware that there are important elections ahead, and he is positioning himself to be a part of it. In 1808, the United States created an act that would no longer allow the importation of slaves from other countries. It was largely implemented to eliminate American participation in the slave trade. Last year, the Louisiana House of Representatives passed a bill that would allow enslaved people to be purchased from Africa, Cuba, and Brazil. This week, Louisiana Senator Dr. Edward Deloney argues in the Senate that the bill must be passed. It is his view that there are not enough African Americans to meet the demand, and that the southern states are therefore unable to reach their maximum productivity and profitability levels. Edwin Stanton returns home to Washington, D.C., and is reunited with his wife, Ellen. They have been married almost 4 years, and she is 15 years his junior. They have one daughter, Eleanor. He has not had an easy personal life. Born in Ohio, he had severe asthma from a young age that secluded him from the other children, so he became an avid reader. He was 13 when his father died. He dropped out of school and got a job at a bookstore to support his family. He had financial issues while in college, so it took him longer to become a lawyer. His first wife, Mary Ann, gave birth to 2 children. The first child, a daughter, died after a prolonged illness. Mary Ann would die of bilious fever 12 years into their marriage. Despite all of this, Edwin has worked hard and has made a good career path for himself, and he and Ellen are happy together. Stanton had been sent to California to represent the federal government in a series of land disputes. He has saved the government vast tracts of land, which is sure to add to his reputation as a lawyer. Mease Butler was the type of man his successful deceased grandfather would have despised. His grandfather, also named Pierce, had come from Ireland, married well, and had made his way up in the world quite quickly. The elder Pierce was a delegate at the U.S. Constitutional Convention, where he demanded concessions for slavery. He created an enormous empire in Georgia built on rice and cotton, and many hundreds of slaves, all from his home in Philadelphia. He continually pushed for his children and grandchildren to be as high-achieving as he was. Those children were largely unable to meet his high bar, though his grandson Mease Butler didn't appear to even try. The younger Pierce was selfish in his personal habits, which included marrying a beautiful actress that eventually ended in divorce. He had no business sense. However, he was the one who had inherited much of his grandfather's wealth, land, property, and enslaved persons. After losing a vast amount of money through gambling and stock market losses, Pierce has Joseph Bryan, Savannah, Georgia's most well-known slave dealer, place advertisements in newspapers throughout the South this week in an effort to remedy his financial situation. Pierce's grand plan is to sell what will be the largest number of enslaved people ever sold in the United States on March 2nd and 3rd, 1859, at a racecourse in Savannah. And those are just a few of the key things that happened the week of February 7th through 13th, 1859. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell to receive notifications when future videos come out. Thank you for watching, and as always, I bid you an affectionate farewell.